everyone. Welcome to the Smart Economy Podcast. We are at day one of Permissionless III, joined by Tristan Frizza, the founder of Zeta Markets. How are you doing today, Tristan?
Yeah, doing great. Just flew in yesterday, so love being in Utah. Enjoying it so far.
How are you dealing with the jet lag?
It's been pretty brutal, I would say. Just flew from Asia, so the time zone difference definitely throws you off. But finally got my first night of good sleep, so I'm happy.
Awesome. So to kind of like kick off and give a little bit of context for who you are and like why you're here, what's like your genesis story into the Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain world?
Yeah, sounds good. So I got started in crypto in about 2017. Just like put on my first few trades. My friend actually sent me some crypto, and I was just like, whoa, what is this? Like, let's just go play around with it. I was learning computer science at the time, so just creating my own like little bots and programs is kind of a fun way to learn Python and do some applied stuff. And that got really interested in what's actually happening under the hood. How does Bitcoin work? How does proof of work work? How does some Ethereum's consensus protocols work? So I ended up taking a bunch of majors in distributed systems. So I got more into the technical side, and then I kind of got a real job for a couple of years, and then eventually was like, hey, I really want to do a startup. I missed the whole DeFi summer boom, but just hearing all these Vitalik podcasts going on, smart contracts and DeFi and what was happening there got me into it. So dabbled a little bit in Ethereum in the early days, probably like end of 2020, and then very quickly switched to Solana in what I guess was kind of the formative days of Solana. Was lucky enough to get introduced to Anatoly when they were looking for teams, and There was like less than 5 teams probably building on Solana. We entered into one of those very early Solana hackathons, I think the second or third one ever, and ended up winning it out of 10,000 something teams, and then basically haven't looked back. We've just been building on Solana ever since.
So you've been like through the bulls and the bears of Solana and the major crisis of FTX.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the highs in 2021 where everything was going ballistic, and people were talking about Solana, and then we saw it crash. Obviously, the price was down, in the gutter at $8, and everyone said that Solana was going to die. And we just kind of put our heads down, and we spent that bear market building, improving a bunch of our infrastructure and figuring out what the gaps were. And that ended up being obviously like a very important thing to do now, hopefully going into another bull cycle.
Yeah, I mean, bear markets for building, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, like, how did you have the conviction to stick around in the ecosystem when like it was really rough? Because there was so much FUD. There was a lot of enterprise concerns. There was a lot of like ties to FTX concerns. Was it like your conviction in building the platform you were building on Solana? Was it also the amount of developers that were still sticking around in the ecosystem? What was it for you?
Yeah, a few different things. So I would say one is probably the technology, and then the second bit is probably the people and the builders. Mm-hmm. In terms of technology, we did a bit of a survey in the bear market. We looked at all these other alternative chains, roll-ups, things like that, and we just couldn't find somewhere that met the technological requirements of the product that we're building. So for decentralized exchanges, especially doing stuff on the perp side, you need them to be very low latency, high throughput, fast, cheap, all these kind of things. And we just kind of looked at all these other ecosystems, and we're like, they just don't beat out Solana. And I have been a very big Solana maxi over the last couple of years, and I just couldn't agree with people. I was just like, I feel like the fundamentals haven't changed, right? Like the price is down, and sure, there's all this kind of stuff that's happened to it, FTX and other things, but I feel like the fundamentals of the network, it's still decentralized, it still works great. Like, I don't know, it's just like a public perception thing, and I knew at some point that it would turn around, and it did in a big way. So that was great. And then in terms of the people, like, I love Anatoly. He's just a fantastic founder and a good role model for me and many other people in the ecosystem. I caught up with him when I was in San Francisco, like during the bear market. We just chatted things through. I was like, liquidity's terrible on chain, and all these kind of things. And at least he was forward thinking enough about it. And I'm like, this guy is, he is just maniac in terms of just like wanting to continue building and pushing through. And he just really believed in it. I'm like, I love that, and that's like such an important characteristic to have. And the same with a lot of the ecosystem builders. There was this meme going around, it's like, there's 75 devs left, it's like the last 300 Spartans that are going to like stay around. And yeah, we would like chat to each other. Everyone became very close. We would have these Solana kind of DeFi ecosystem calls where maybe like 30 people would hop on, and the vibes are a bit down, but people are like, no, we just like keep building. Like, we just got to push through to see to the other side. And that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, I had Austin Federa, the head of Solana Labs, on the podcast last October. We interviewed in September. just before Breakpoint 2 took place.
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of like dawned on me as like an outsider looking in, like, wow, Solana like made it through, and like it's about to really start taking off as an ecosystem. And one of the things that I thought was really impressive is that we're starting to see developers who are coming into Web3 for the first time. They're leapfrogging, building on Bitcoin and building on Ethereum, and they're coming to Solana first.
Yeah.
So in a similar essence to developers coming in and leapfrogging, now with Zeta Markets, are you also starting to see that you're getting users who for the first time are using the Solana network, who are using your DEX, and they're not necessarily going to Uniswap or using whatever else there is on Bitcoin right now?
Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting to see that, especially from our perspective, because we started on Solana, like building at least in the very early days. There was shocking developer tooling. It was just like really hard to get your head around. Like Rust had this massive learning curve.
Right.
All the libraries were just like quite painful to use. That's improved so much in the last couple of years. So I'm really glad to see new entrants coming in, being able to build stuff fairly quickly. And I know like the DevRels and like ecosystem people have been doing a fantastic job. So that's been really great. From our perspective, definitely. We went through this bear market where we had like very little users and we were struggling through, and we did this whole rewrite and we were like, our tech is a lot better and it's now like scaling properly. It feels like the exchange works, but we were like pre-Breakpoint last year, I guess, where no one was really aware of Solana or the benefits. And I think given this whole kind of catalyst of Breakpoint, as well as like a bunch of new Solana protocols popping up, or I guess like launching tokens and stuff
Pumping
like that.
up.
Yeah, exactly. There was just like this mad rush of people just bridging in. As well, I think the bridges got a lot better. People bridging in from other networks, or just, like you said, leapfrogging, jumping into Solana straight away. And I remember just looking at our like user numbers on the chart over like December, January kind of period, and it went from like very flat and just like had this crazy dog leg, and people were coming on and they would write this stuff about us or Jupiter or other kind of dexes there and just be like, wow, Solana is just incredible. It's super fast. I just send a transaction, it executes immediately. I paid almost like nothing in gas. And coming from like, the Ethereum kind of background, that was kind of nuts for them, and it was like a mind-blowing experience. Likewise, when I sometimes have to go to Ethereum and do a DEX swap, I'm like, oh my God, I have to like approve this thing. I got to pay like $10 in gas fees. It takes like 30 seconds to go through, and I'm just like kind of sweating it, seeing if it's like going to happen. So it's really cool, and I think that catalyst was really important. Now Solana has cemented itself as this real thing that people use, and it's got a lot of mindshare, so I'm very happy how it's played out.
Yeah, it's awesome to see kind of like a third ecosystem kind of take footholds, and now we have a little bit more resiliency for people who want to build on different networks.
Yeah, correct.
If you go to the Zeta Markets website, the tagline is the speed of a sex with the security of a DEX. Can you just like share like an elevator pitch, 30-second overview of what Zeta Markets is and how you guys create this experience of like a centralized exchange by leveraging all the things that we appreciate about security and speed and with a DEX?
Yeah. So that's always been our thesis and that's what got us started in the early days, was DeFi was too clunky and too slow, especially on some of these legacy networks. Like we used to do some kind of like options trading stuff, and we would look at some of the very early protocols. They would have like 10% spreads, massive fees. It was just completely unusable. I'm like, this is like a nice proof of concept, but it's never going to work in the real world. That's why we chose Solana in the early days, because we're like, hey, if you have high throughput and performance on the base chain, we can actually build something here that's feasible. And that's our current product. We've done it fully on-chain order books, which was quite like a feat of engineering. And we've done like $12 billion of volume through that, which is pretty cool for over 100,000 users, outside of the US, obviously, which has been really great. And now we're trying to scale that further. So we want to really compete on equal footing with centralized exchanges. That's something that we experience very viscerally with exchanges like FTX essentially blowing up. People don't want to use DeFi because I guess the user experience is quite poor and clunky. The liquidity is not quite there. It's just like not as convenient. And so people make this trade-off where they have to go to these centralized counterparties who basically custody their funds, who don't have transparency in terms of their balance sheet or how their kind of exchange operations are done. We just don't think that is the model that needs to be around in the next couple of years. Like, I will be very disappointed if in 5 years we are still trading on the same centralized exchanges that haven't evolved. And so our mission was, how do we have the best of both worlds? We have the performance and not having to trade off on that, but also have the security and transparency.
Right.
And so that's why we're kind of building the new version of our exchange, which is going to be Zeta X, and we're building essentially a roll-up on Solana, which is kind of an innovative new thing. This thing will let us do a bunch of order book computation off-chain. We can ZK verify it, post that back on Solana. We think it gives us like a really big leg up in terms of some of the current DEXs that are out there, so we can get 5 millisecond latency in terms of placing orders, which is just as fast as Binance, if not faster. We get a few thousand transactions per second, which is more than enough for kind of any trading platform. And then we can do a lot on the user experience side, not having people like sign all the time, making it gasless, just like trying to onboard people and make that more frictionless. And then eventually we want to open up that L2 to like a bigger ecosystem. Anyone who wants to build ultra low latency DeFi apps, they want to compose things on top of it, I think it'll be really cool to have that ecosystem. And then people won't have to depend so much on these centralized platforms. Like we'll have a proper ecosystem for trading and for DeFi out there.
Totally. So like as an end user, like if I want my mom to start using DeFi, it needs to be really simple for her. There needs to be like an OAuth sort of thing that she can create an account with.
We already have that, so that's good. Yeah, you come in there, you bring your Google account, your Twitter, your TikTok, whatever you want it to be. You don't have to deal with passphrases. You just kind of log in. We'll have a way to on-ramp directly into that. So
cool.
You know, using whatever kind of fiat banking methods, and then you can kind of just get started from there, which I think would be really cool.
I think a lot gets lost in building an on-chain order book. So could you just like really briefly talk about why that was such a Herculean task and what makes you so proud about your order book?
Yeah, absolutely. So order books are kind of the gold standard in traditional finance. It's been around for decades essentially, and it kind of runs those traditional markets. We've seen the emergence of these automated market makers, or AMMs, pop up in DeFi, so Uniswap being the best example of that. Those work really well for this kind of people spinning up permissionless liquidity. It makes it very easy to provide liquidity for certain pairs. You just put it into this vault, it rebalances. The problem is, I guess, for like more high frequency markets and when you're starting to trade things with leverage, that speed and that price discovery becomes a bit harder to do via AMMs, and you tend to find they get killed a bit in terms of impermanent loss. Like LPs tend to just lose money, and I feel like Uniswap has just had this miracle of marketing that they call impermanent loss, which feels like, oh yeah, I'm never actually losing money because it's impermanent. But I feel like people have just done the modeling over and over again and just say it's not necessarily like a long-term profitable thing. It's good for bootstrapping phase of like these early markets, but I think when you want to hit scale, order books are the way to go. But they require a lot of computation on chain. You got to have your bids and your asks. You got to be able to like match and iterate over them. I won't get into the details, but it takes quite a lot of compute and kind of mucking around there. And so us building that on chain and now being able to do all this like ZK verification of this entire like processor, I think is quite a lot of work. But we think it's going to give the best in terms of price efficiency and generally how markets work. But then having it on chain obviously would be really nice.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to delve into with you is why does Solana need L2s? It's a high throughput, high latency chain, but you provided like a really good reason that there's going to be ZK proofs that verify that somebody might indeed be making a bid or an ask. Are there any other reasons right now that you could foresee why an L2 would need to be built on like such a powerful, fast chain?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic, and I think has been a controversial one in Solana circles because it's very much gone down the monolithic roadmap, and then there's this like modular roadmap. But I think there is kind of like a nice overlap in the Venn diagram there. I definitely don't agree that L2s need to be done for everything, and me and Tolly have chatted about this. Like, we don't need an Arbitrum or an Optimism for Solana. Like,
correct.
Solana's already got the same performance for like the majority of applications. That's why it's a great general purpose chain. But for us, we went down this, they're calling it like network extension route, where I guess niche subsets or verticals that need to be specialized. It's very hard to do on the main chain. For us, because it's a trading platform, we need like very high reliability. We need isolation from congestion. We need latency to be like millisecond low, essentially. Whereas Solana has these 400 millisecond block times, like still like an order of magnitude or two too slow for us. And yeah, that's why we decided we need to build this for specific applications. Trading, to me, made a ton of sense. I think gaming as well, where you need kind of high throughput, you need to kind of abstract gas, and it's like a little bit of a different model. That makes sense. Deep in, potentially, I think would be another one because it's at such great scale, although that seems to be working on the L1. So I don't know yet what the full scope is. We're still kind of putting out feelers for who would like to build on our network or who else is kind of building in the ecosystem doing other kind of L2s. There are a few popping up now, so it'll be interesting to see the applications that pop up.
How did you guys leverage, for when you built your ZK VM, how did you leverage what's already out there? Did you borrow ideas and concepts from EVM land? Were you just like digging into white papers and seeing what applied to the architecture that Solana affords you? What was kind of the thought process in how you built with existing composability?
Yeah. So I think we already knew on the exchange side a lot of the ins and outs of that. So the business logic, I think, is like fairly well understood by the team. The roll-up thing was definitely like a new adventure for us. We have definitely dug into what's been happening in terms of the prior research on Ethereum. I think there's like a lot of good progress there. We've also been partnering with some like really strong teams who have experience at places like Consensus and have built roll-ups for years, and so they've been really good partners to us. So we're working quite closely with the Sovereign Labs teams. They've been building roll-ups for years. They really know the ins and outs. And they've been a great partner. We've also been working really closely with the Risk Zero team. They built essentially this ZK VM, so we can just write Rust. We can just basically ship it off to their kind of ZK VM, and it creates the proofs for us under the hood. We don't have to write custom circuits and become like domain experts in ZK. So it's really nice that these tools are popping up and making our life a lot easier. And yeah, seeing like a flourishing of I guess this kind of roll-up stack and a lot of the ZK tools.
Yeah, and so what's are perps already live on Zeta? Are they going to be live? And what's kind of like the market demand for this trading venue?
Sounds good. Yeah, so they're live on the L1 product that we have right now. On the L2, that's going to be rolling out start of next year on mainnet. We have a testnet coming out pretty soon, which will just have paper money, paper trading, just to like rough it up a bit and see where the bugs are and try and improve things. But we're trying to get to mainnet, I guess, start of next year. And yeah, I've been seeing like a ton of demand. I think perps are just going to be massive this cycle in general. Like, people need places to trade. We need to have markets on everything. I'm like very convinced that out of all the applications in crypto, I think exchanges are a very strong one. There always needs to be some kind of medium of exchange. And something that I see there's just like a big market gap in Solana. Like spot is very popular, like Jupiter, Radium, and meme coins have really found product market fit, and that's been popping off. But I've yet to see, I guess, leverage trading, perpetuals, stuff like that really take off in a big way on Solana. I think there's like a few players like ourselves and some others that have doing relatively well, but looking at other ecosystems which are absolutely killing it, looking at centralized exchanges, we've probably got like another order of magnitude or even two to grow from there. And so that's what I want to make happen on Solana.
Yeah, I love hearing that like your competition isn't other Web3 DeFi platforms. Like you're really coming to take the meat away from the big institutional centralized exchanges.
That's right.
Kind of like zooming out and wrapping up, we were talking about how you're based out of Singapore, but you're here at an American conference. Right now, there's a lot of regulatory ambiguity for the future of crypto in the US. Why did you fly out here? Do you see a reason for hope for builders here in the States, for potential users of Zeta in the future? Do you have faith in America to fix itself?
Good question.
When it comes to crypto?
Yeah. So very candidly, like we can't offer our product to US customers. Like regulations are very clear on that. So we geofence and geoblock everything very strictly to be compliant there. We'll see if that changes in the future, but that's largely up to policymakers to do that. And I know some conversations are kind of happening in places like DC, and people are trying to move things forward and make it a more kind of a better environment, I guess, for crypto in the US. So I am long-term optimistic that things kind of pan out. Something I will note, I guess, just having attended conferences, across Asia, and this being like my first proper one in the US, is like very much like a builder focus here. I feel like there's a lot of very smart people and technologists who build like very interesting things. So it's great that we have such a core base of smart people building interesting stuff there. I feel like on the Asia side, it's a bit more like fast and loose with things happening. There's less like innovation, but I guess it's more of a hub and a kind of sandbox for applications to take shape. And I'm really glad to see some of the policy in places like that is a bit more progressive, and they're willing to take, I guess, slightly bigger liberties, I guess, with crypto.
Yeah, I was just in Singapore for Token, and the vibes out there were completely different to what we see here.
Yeah.
And I know my last question might sound like it's a bit reiterative because of what I just asked you about the vibe differences between conferences outside the US and here, but and also it's day one, so you haven't really had a time to like run around the whole conference, go to a bunch of talks, have your talk yet. So maybe you can talk about that here. But what's just like your biggest takeaway from Permissionless?
I mean, I literally just got here, so not much has happened so far, but it's been great to see. There's like a Solana Founders Day coming up tomorrow, and I've already bumped into some Solana founders around, so I'm glad that there's a Solana presence here and that people are talking about it, and it seems like there's going to be a bunch of great agenda in terms of some of the talks, and looking forward to the panel and meeting other people here, so yeah, it should be exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that there's a bigger splash of the Solana ecosystem outside the EVM ecosystem. I think we're rife for having more places to build and to really have more people like that out and open. Well, Tristan, thank you so much for chatting with us. I appreciate it, man.
Not at all. Appreciate it too.
And for anyone else who wants to hear any of the other interviews we've had, feel free to head over to the Neo News Today YouTube channel where you can catch all the video interviews we've had here at Permissionless.